Welcome to Fierce, Fun, Feminine, and Other F Words. I'm Christine Elizabeth, and I help women unstuck themselves. And today I'm going to help you get unstuck from fear. And I'm not just talking about spiders and snakes, although they're true fears. I'm talking about what's the fear that's holding you back in your life, besides bumblebees? And are you passing fears on to your children? It's a lot to get into, so let's get started. I don't like spiders and snakes. So much so that a couple seasons ago, I don't know, spring or summer, whenever it is that snakes come out and show their faces and sunbathe on the rocks, there were two huge garden snakes in my front yard. When I say huge, 2.5, 3 feet long, if they were uncoiled, just long and creepy. And I had to name them Bert and Ernie so that I could get myself to walk by them just to get the mail. It was hilarious. My kids watched me. They were laughing at me. And I was like, why? Because they would just be like unassuming. They blend in with the rocks and I'd walk by and get startled and they could care less about me, but I have this crazy fear of them. So anyway, that's not what we're going to talk about today. But I mean, they are real fears, right? So I do have some stories about animal fears that I don't really have too many. It's mostly snakes, but anything else, I don't have fear of being in a kayak with an orca. I don't have a fear of dogs. I don't have any of that. Not even really insects, although I do check the bed to make sure no spiders are in the sheets before I climb in. So there is that. But you know, fear has other ways of showing up in our life, as you know. Oprah was on an interview with Brené Brown. And if you don't know who Brené Brown is, I want to point you to her. She is absolutely incredible. She talks about courage and vulnerability and just showing up to be authentic and how it's real bravery when we show our true vulnerabilities, when we show our fears and our weaknesses. And she interviewed Oprah, and Oprah said this: "You cannot live a brave life without disappointing people." I just want you to think about that for a minute, because that hit me. When we have to speak our truth or say something that we know is going to be difficult. Why is it difficult? It's not difficult because it's our truth. It's difficult because we don't know how it's going to land to the person that has to hear it. We don't know how they're going to respond. We don't know what the results are going to be, and we fear that. And that's what holds us back. So that shows up, and we're going to talk about that. Also, how about this? I'm not funny, I'm brave. Lucille Ball. That's in actions, right? She was brave, if you think about it, and she's just hilarious, right? She was this goofball comedy that made everyone in the world laugh. But at the time that her shows were popular, it was not normal for a woman to have those actions on a public screen. She went over the top in all of her drama to get us to laugh at a time where women weren't supposed to behave that way. So maybe what is it that we're holding back that we should be doing, that we know we're called to do? We know we're good at it, but we're not stepping into it because we fear something. That's what I want to talk about today. What is it? What is that fear that's holding you back, holding me back? I examine this on a regular basis, and I've had to overcome some things and do things in my own life. So I feel like I can talk about fear in a way that shares some experience because I've overcome it with some bravery, but I still have fears. We all do. Fear is part of being human. So it is one of the 7 universal emotions everybody on the globe experiences. No matter what culture they live in, where you grew up, how you were raised, fear is one of the 7 universal emotions. I didn't even know there was such a thing, right? But there is. The other emotions are anger, contempt, disgust, enjoyment, sadness, and surprise. Fear is one of them. Fear is good, actually. It was in us because it was human nature. We had to have a way to preserve our life, to be able to live. Fear makes sense. If you lived in caveman times, if you didn't have fear and that fight or flight mechanism, you opened yourself up to danger. You were more susceptible. So you have to be able to tap into that fear. And so being fearless is really not always smart, right? You need to have a sense of discernment to know what we should be afraid of and what we shouldn't be afraid of. And I'm not ever going to suggest you should be fearless in all areas of your life. But I am going to suggest that there are areas where you and I have fear that are just simple things that, well, they're not simple. I shouldn't say that. But they are things that we really should just step into because it's not going to be that bad on the other side. So what triggers fear? Why do we have them? Well, it's a threat of harm. whether it's real or imagined. It can be physical, emotional, psychological well-being, but fear is learned. We're not born fearful. We're not. Well, there are 2 fears that you're born with. And this is a really interesting study, but scientists are proving that there are only 2 fears we're born with. Do you know what they are? Fear of falling and fear of loud noises. So they did a study, and I can't remember the study, but you could find it anywhere on Google. They took 2 tables and spread them apart. And in between the 2 tables, they put plexiglass down. And they had babies, now it was safe, and they had babies walk across or crawl across the plexiglass. They had animals go, all different things cross this plexiglass. Do you know what they found? Babies and kittens wouldn't cross, but ducks would. And they were like, why would the ducks would? Oh, they can fly. That makes sense. So the fear of falling was there. Now, yes, babies get to the edge of something and, they get to the edge of whatever they're crawling on. It could be your bed, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, this kid's just going to crash right onto the floor. I don't know if that's a lack of fear of falling. I don't know if that's because their vision, the depth perception isn't there. I really can't answer that. But I do know that scientists have been studying this and say the fear of falling is natural. You're born with it. So if you don't have it now, it means you've overcome it. So you have already overcome one fear. And loud noises. Both of those fears can be outgrown. But what's interesting is that we learn other fears as we grow up. So spiders and snakes, that's one. Rats and mice. Ooh, okay. Fear of failing. How about that? Maybe you are not doing something because you're afraid you're not going to be good at it and you don't want to expose yourself. You don't want to look like a failure. Public speaking. How about claustrophobia, closed spaces? The fear of the dark. Dentists. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I was one of those kids that did not get taken to the dentist on a regular basis as a child. It was a financial thing. And so I got to the dentist, I don't know, maybe I was around 12 years old. My entire mouth was filled with cavities. And I did not go to an adult or a children's dentist. I went to an adult dentist who had no compassion for my mouth whatsoever. And I know that they just wanted to get in there and get this work done. But it wasn't the kind of experience where I had fear. There's still people that have fear of that, right? Maybe you're a dentist and you're listening to this. People have true fear of your work. Well, now I've overcome that fear so much. My mouth is my only area of health that I've had to worry about because of that experience as a child, 100 years ago. I'm not that old, but, they did amalgam fillings and then I had to go in and have them all replaced because I wanted to be healthier. And I've had all kinds of things in my gums that I had to have work on. I have overcome that fear. Now, I love the dentist because I know if my oral health is good, the rest of my health is good. But I had to overcome that fear to get there. People are afraid of birds. I have an employee who is terrified of birds. And it makes me laugh. Like, what? Maybe you're one of them. And it's because they're unpredictable. She said, I don't know where they're going to come from. So, she really doesn't love, bird feeders are frightening to her. Just to be able to know that birds can dart in and out. People are afraid of dogs. I also know someone who was attacked by a dog at a young age, and she grew up never overcoming it. And guess what? Her children are afraid of dogs now. So what are we giving our children? What fears do we have that our kids also have? Something we need to think about. Well, here's the craziest one I have ever heard. And this one, I laughed my head off when I heard it, but I shouldn't have because it's a true fear. There's a lady that's afraid of fish that was a client in my business, as in goldfish. She said, I cannot fathom the idea of having a goldfish in my house. My kids, we don't have any animals. And they said, well, Mom, can we get a goldfish? And she said, I would rather you get a snake. I died laughing when she was telling me the story. like, that's a fear? I had no idea. I guess I could see it if you were, standing in crystal clear blue Caribbean water and fish were swarming you and you didn't like that, where the little beautiful, colorful fish come in because they're used to humans feeding them. I could see you not liking that. That can feel kind of icky, but a goldfish? I shouldn't laugh because it's a true fear, but the fears that we grow up with and we develop are really, they're out there, right? And how do we overcome them? How about the fear of the dark? Did you ever have a basement growing up and you had to go down there for something and you ran up the steps because you knew the boogeyman was going to get you right on your heels? How about in your bedroom as a child and you really thought something was under your bed? It was dark and you didn't know. Do your kids struggle with that now? Do you? When you ever go, do you do this when you go? I'm going to expose myself here. You go into a brand new hotel room, you check into the hotel. Do you go in and make sure nobody's in the closet, the dark closet, or hiding in the dark bathroom behind the shower curtain? There's something about the dark because hidden things are there, right? Things that are going to take us by surprise, and we don't want that. So you're actually showing an act of bravery. Here I am patting myself on the back. It's brave that I go do that. I don't know what I would do if I found someone in the shower at a hotel, but at least I'm going after it, right? We also have a fear of judgment and success. There are some people that hold themselves back because they don't know what they would do if they were successful. They've never experienced success in their life to a certain level. Maybe there's no one in their family that's successful. Fear of success is a real thing. And, a lot of people will go, what? I don't get it. Well, I don't get fear of goldfish, but it's a true thing. So we teach our kids to be afraid. And I guess I am trying to think when I was creating the notes for this podcast, what fears did I pass on to my children? And I did have some fear. I had fat phobia. I did. I was so fearful of gaining weight and I just was self-critical. I went overboard with exercise and nutrition. It's a true phobia. Now, I didn't fear fat in other people. It was my own thing. And guess what? It influenced my daughter's relationship with food and exercise. And she developed a fat phobia, but she took it a step further and developed a severe eating disorder and went into liver and kidney failure. So our fears can really affect our children. And I want to just talk about where it starts. I had no idea. I knew a little bit, but I didn't know to the extent that I know now. We teach children to be afraid in utero. Mamas, if you're carrying a baby, you can impress that developing fetus with your fears. There was a study at the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior at, I think it was University of California. Where was that study? One of the University of Californias. You can Google it, actually. It's called the Neurobehavioral Risk Associated with Gestational Exposure to Stress Hormones. So there you go. It's one of those California universities. Anyway, as a mother is carrying a child, cortisol, when she's stressed, cortisol spikes in mom and crosses the placenta. It gets intercepted by some enzyme, not entirely, but it does get intercepted. And babies that are exposed to prolonged mom fear have a higher chance of being fearful children. They're slower to develop after birth, and there's a myriad of other things. What? So have you ever thought about that? Like, let's think of, maybe you are a mom, maybe you're not, but you're going to be. Maybe you're not going to be. But this is something to really pay attention to because you're going to know people that are pregnant around you. If mom carrying a baby is under prolonged stress, that child is experiencing the stress hormones. It doesn't understand the stress that's going on out in the world, but it's experiencing those stress hormones, and it has the same effect on the developing fetus's body and brain. I had some stress when I was carrying my first child, my son. And it was some, a few months of intense stress. There was crying. I was sad. And he is not fearful. He is fearful of disappointing people. So he does have that people-pleasing thing. But he's my sensitive child. They both are. But he's the one that wears his emotions on his sleeve. He's the one that is more in tune to me as far as my emotions go and all of that. And he's also the one that's more willing to share it. My daughter and I are super close. oh my gosh, my relationship with my kids. I'm recording this on Mother's Day, and I'm just feeling so blessed and grateful for my relationship with them. But it's interesting, when I was preparing the notes for this podcast, I thought about, what was I going through when I was carrying these babies? And when I was carrying my son, there was a really stressful thing going on. When I was carrying my daughter, it was stressful but exciting, because I moved from Michigan to Washington State in my 8th month of pregnancy. That would stress most people out. Not for me. I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie, and I had my babies at home. So that's a whole other story. I did that on purpose. But I was more in my element when I was carrying my daughter. I felt more in my zone and less fearful. So I wonder what it was for you if you have children. And does it ring true for the children that you have? Like, are they more sensitive? Are they fearful? I think it's really interesting to really think about it. So let's look at some real life fears. Let's talk about real life fear, because we don't need to get into the neurology of it. What are some things that women are afraid of? How about leaving a bad marriage or a bad relationship? Why do women hang on? Besides the attachment style and their upbringing and all of that, what is it though? Do you ever sit and think, why would she stay? Do you ever think about it? Why do women in abused marriages or abusive relationships choose to stay? We just did a podcast not too long ago on a couple marriages that were going through some really heavy things, and they stayed. One is still married, one isn't. And what was the reason they stuck it out? Fear. Because fear of losing their family, fear of breaking up a family, fear of repercussion, fear of how they'll be judged on the outside because they don't want that scarlet letter of divorce across their chest, right? There's all different fears that come into play. How about just a fear of having a conversation with maybe a friend or a boss? It's just, what is it? What is it in your life? What is it you can see it in your friends. It's so funny. It's interesting because you can see it operating in your circle of friends and family, right? They're like, yeah, they need to do that, but they haven't done it yet. Well, there's reasons you haven't done it. And there's times where you have to let things roll, unfold, and play out. But there's other times where people just don't because they're frozen. They're stuck in fear. How about this? Why have we never heard from some of the most amazing humans on earth? Fear of public speaking. Why are they afraid to speak in public? They're writing, but they're not speaking. Do you know how many people in the world have an incredible message to share, but they don't want to because they are so afraid of speaking in public? Maybe it's you. What is it? Where did that come from? Are you holding a story in that you really know you want to share a story because it can help someone else, and you're just petrified because you don't want to get in front of people? You're afraid your story is going to be so moving that you're going to get picked up by other people to come, share in a church, share on a podcast. Hey, I'm always looking for people. If you have a story, a podcast is a great way to get started. If you're afraid of sharing your story, you don't have to be face to face. Not all podcasts have video. Mine doesn't. Maybe someday, but right now, if you're on my podcast, we don't record video. It's just audio. And so it's a little bit easier to tap your toe in the water and start sharing. But that fear of public speaking holds people back. And I don't know if they learn it as children, because if you think about elementary school and, some schools have speech meets, and it's to help these children not only memorize their speech, but to learn presentation. And some kids just are in the zone and they thrive in that environment, and others are so scared. They can't remember their lines or whatever they're memorizing. Was that you? And why is it? I don't know, but why is it? And is it really that big of a deal? Like, what's the worst that can happen? You kind of have to look at it that way. So, okay, let's say you have a fear of speaking. You have a fear of this conversation with this person that you're holding back because you don't know how they're going to respond. If there's any chance of physical harm, you need to not have that conversation in person. But if it's something that is just you're fearful of the response, start in baby steps and start by looking at, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen, and unpack it backwards. So let's say it's you holding your magic from the world and you're not sharing it. What's the worst that could happen? You only reached one person? Is that not enough? Fear is a liar. It says, face everything and run. But I'm going to say, face everything and rise. What about fear of aging and dying? Okay, in the United States, this is huge. Other nations, I know a lot of women from other countries where aging is an honor. Aging and death are not something to fear. It's something they embrace. But in the United States, we're obsessed with youthfulness. We really are. We want our appearance to just be this fountain of youth. I'm there. I know it. I get it. I wrestle with it. I really do, because I don't know what it is. There's something in our culture. You know what it probably is? Fear of rejection. Maybe that's what it is, because in the cultures that don't fear aging and dying, there's no rejection. That woman who has hips and curves and wrinkles enough for everybody is honored. She's honored and she's treasured and she's cherished and she's almost not idolized, but do you know what I mean? She's on a pedestal because she's lived life. She's given life. She's given birth. She's nurtured her community. She's contributed to society. She's everything. Nobody looked at Mother Teresa. No one on earth looked at Mother Teresa and thought, wow, she needs some Botox. Nobody. But if Mother Teresa were in the United States, that influence would be there. We have a fear of aging. I am still walking. I'm in my 50s. So I'm still, walking that line. Someone in my salon just had a lower half facelift and she's 57, I think. It's gorgeous. It was subtle. It doesn't look like her face is frozen. It was outstanding work, right? And I'm going, wow. So if you're going to do that, you could do it before your face is falling. So it's not so dramatic, and who cares, right? If it is dramatic, but I love beauty and I own a salon. So I'm around all of these beauty things. And maybe that's part of my resistance to aging and aging well. But this facelift thing got me thinking, there's other nations that they don't have the funds, first of all. They don't have the means to get a facelift, but they wouldn't get a facelift because they see aging as a badge of honor. There is no fear, right? Death, oh my gosh. The fear of death is so immense. I can't even go into it here. I'm going to recommend something, and I don't ever usually do this, and I'm not a TV person, I'm a book person, but somebody said to me, get on Netflix and watch Surviving Death. Just watch the first episode. It was fascinating. So it is about near-death experiences all around the globe, people that don't know each other, and they all had a similar story. They all experienced this story of warmth and acceptance and love, and they didn't want to leave it. They all saw some form of light. It's like, I see the light. That's a thing. So this Netflix documentary is called Surviving Death. I can't say I'm going to recommend it because I haven't only seen the first episode, but it really did open my eyes to this could help people not fear death, because there was a mother who was in a kayak in Costa Rica, underwater for 30 minutes. She's a physician. Everything in her education right now, and she says this on the documentary, everything I know, study, and believed, everything is flown in the face of that. I'm alive with no negative residuals from being dead for 30 minutes. None. No memory loss, nothing. And when she was in that near-death space, that area where she felt warm, she didn't want to come back. And she had children. And I think, wow, that's really powerful. This could help people overcome the fear of dying. Just knowing all of these people who don't know each other have a same story. They're studying it. There's people that actually are dedicated to studying this very topic because they're saying, wow, if we believe that we're dead when our brain is dead, right? Educated culture, you're brain dead, you're gone. But there's a consciousness when you're gone and then you come back. Maybe we're not dead when we're gone. And, faith plays into this as well, what you believe for, whether you believe in reincarnation or you believe in heaven or whatever you believe, that helps alleviate fear of dying. But some people still are afraid of it. And it's a really interesting topic to get into. Animal and insect fear is an easy one, right? And it's something you can overcome. And I know, no way. I don't kill spiders. Somebody will tell me I don't kill spiders. I call people from next door to kill spiders because they're trying to kill me. And I laugh at it, but it paralyzes people. But you can overcome any fear. You truly can, but you have to be dedicated to it. How much do you want to move the needle in your life? How much do you want to move forward? And what is that fear doing to you? The worst part of fear, when you worry about something, it leads to worry, right? Worry is a huge waste of time. Sorry, not sorry. It really is. You're putting your thoughts and energy into something that hasn't even happened. Do you do that? I mean, it hasn't happened yet, and you're worrying about all the worst case scenario. I'm not even going to go into the law of attraction and how you're attracting what you're worried about by thinking about it. But wherever you put your energy is what you're pulling in, right? I'm not going to talk about that. But what about worry on the long term? What is that? Chronic worriers have anxiety. That's chronic fear. Chronic fear leads to anxiety. Now, I'm not talking all anxiety. Some anxiety is mentally on a chemical level and needs to be medicated. But I'll guess, I would put money on the amount of people that are on anxiety meds in the United States anyway, for right now. They don't have a true mental disorder. They have chronic worry and fear. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that. If you don't agree with me, I would love to hear from you. But I think that is one medication that, these anti-anxiety meds, yes, you can use it for a short period of time to help you get through a thing. But I think they're used as they're overprescribed. I feel like people are not doing the work they could be doing to overcome the thing. And let's just medicate it because it's easier. Your choice. No judgment. It's just something that you could probably overcome. This is not medical advice. Don't take this podcast as your medical advice. It's just my opinion. I do know that chronic fear leads to chronic worry, which leads to chronic anxiety, and chronic anxiety gets crippling and paralyzing, and then we're medicated. Instead of going backwards and working backward from that to find out why we have chronic anxiety, we're just pushing pills. But I'll get off that one. So prolonged fear, what does it do? It increases cortisol. What does that do? Cortisol is not always your friend. You need it. But if it's always spiked, it interrupts your sleep. It leads to prolonged fatigue, weight gain, and a decreased immune response. So we want to work on this. Fear is something we want to tackle, but it's feedback, right? So if you're feeling a fear, let's use me for an example. I'm going to use a real life example. My marriage was at a point where it was not going well, right? So I was unhappy. There was a lot of bickering, and it was chronic. It was chronic. We were just at each other. It was just to the point. Have you ever been there in a relationship where you're just like, I need a break? I finally got to the point where I was going to break if I didn't have a break. And this is something where, you're married 25 plus years and you have to speak your truth. And I had to speak. I argued my points. I stood on my ground. I did all the things, but I needed a way. I needed to separate from my spouse. And I had the hard conversation. I finally got to the point where my voice shook and I had to say, I'm moving out tomorrow. I'm not divorcing you. I'm going to hit pause because this is not working. I had one child still living at home when I did that. And it was the hardest conversation. I think it took me over 1 year to get the courage to do it. Was it scary? Absolutely. Was it, what's the word? Did I feel freedom and lighter after I said it and after I did it? Yes. What is that conversation that you're holding back? Because your truth is your truth. Is it that maybe you just want to ask for a raise, right? Now, that's going to be challenging after COVID and businesses are shut down, but maybe there's some other win-win situation that could happen, right? Maybe it's a work situation with a coworker that you need to go forward and say, hey, something, whatever. This is a situation I'm experiencing around you. This is how I experience you, and I'm feeling this way. Can we talk about it? Is it a relationship? Is it an ex? Maybe you're co-parenting, and maybe they have a new wife, that's involving, it can get really mucky and ugly, right? But we hold back and we don't get into the conversation because we're afraid. And I'm here to tell you, do not be afraid. Because when you speak your truth, you feel liberated. You said it. These conversations are some of the hardest things we carry for a very long time. And I'm trying to show you ways that you can, speaking my truth about moving out was horrifying. I didn't know what the judgment was going to be. I didn't know what people were going to say about me. I didn't know what my kids were going to think. I didn't know if he was going to say, fine, if you're walking out, then I'm divorced. I didn't know anything. But I knew that I knew I had to speak that truth. I had to overcome that fear if I was going to interrupt the pattern we were in and change things. And you can't control what people on the other side are going to do. You can't be worried about it. So fear is feedback, and I had to lean into that. What was it telling me? How could I make fear my ally? What are you afraid of? So I want you to take the time to think about, what is it that you're holding back? Is it going for a new career? Are you thinking this isn't for me anymore? Wow, COVID shook things up, and I'm now thinking I didn't really like the work I was in. I want to try something new. Are you afraid to try it? What is it? What is that fear? Lean into it. Make that fear your friend so that you can get the courage and bravery to overcome it, because you don't want to get 10 years down the road and say, I never did that thing because I didn't know what was going to happen. You're the brave woman. Step into the bravery, courage that it takes to go into whatever it is you want to do. You are the only person that can move the needle in your life. I sat with my fear of speaking my truth to my spouse about, moving out and hitting pause on this marriage. I sat with it for way longer than I should have. Way longer. When you sit with it for a while, it's okay. But if you sit with it for too long, you'll never do anything. And nothing changes until you change. You have to initiate it. I was hoping while I was sitting with it that, maybe things will turn around. Maybe they'll get better. It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't. It's on you to make it happen. I remember going in West Seattle. There's a Reiki master, and I'd never been to one. And this was probably about 4 years ago. And I thought, I'm going to try a Reiki session. And if you don't know what it is, it's all about your energy and healing energy. And it was my very first experience. So I don't even know if this is what all Reiki sessions are like. Maybe you have a different experience. But this guy, when I met him, he was floating. Just this energy that was this beautiful vibe. When I walked in, I'm like, wow, I want to be around his presence more, right? And he worked with, they don't touch you. They kind of use their hands over you, and it's a very serene, peaceful experience. You're on a massage table, at least I was with this one, and the lights are down, and he's moving over you without touching you, and it's kind of like finding blockages of energy. And, in my first 4 years of college, I would have told you that's hokey and woo-woo. And in my next few years of college, when I was going into chiropractic, I was more exposed to it. Still kind of woo-woo, but kind of interested. Now I'm all about it because I understand energy. Energy is not woo-woo. We're all energy. We all put out a vibe, whether you know it or not. A dog can feel it. The moon creates the tide, the tides to go in and out, that energy, that magnetic pull. So this guy was working on my energy. And he went into my childhood and he went into other things. But one of the things he said after I was finished the session, I sat up and he looked at me and he said, "This world is fear school. You are learning fear out there." And I'll never forget it because he said, what is the worst thing that could happen if you overcame your fear? If you did the one thing that you were afraid of, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe you're afraid of bungee jumping and that could go south. I'm not talking about that. That's a true fear. But things that could move the needle in your life, things that could move you forward as a partner, in a career, in your health, in your fitness. Are you so overwhelmed that you're afraid to even start because you don't know where to start and you're afraid you won't get anywhere? That's a fear. I know women who know they want to improve their health and fitness. They know they want to lose weight, but they've been, in their mind, they've been overweight all their life. They don't even know where to begin, so they don't. You know what? My whole family's overweight. I'm just going to stay here because I don't know what to do, and I probably wouldn't be successful anyway. That's a fear mindset. It's a defeated mindset. So if you have something you want to move the needle in, today is the day for you to think about it. Today is the day for you to go to the dentist. Get the teeth done. I don't care. That one you shouldn't be putting off. Your oral health affects everything. And dental fear is a real fear. You need to go. It's time to do it. Dentists all over the world specialize in fear. You can find one and they'll help put you more at ease. So whether it's the tough conversation, whether it's changing jobs, whether it's the dentist, or whether it's getting in the gym and tackling some health issues, whatever it is, I'm challenging you now, face your fear. It is time for you to take charge. There is no better time than right now. And before I wrap this up, I want you to think about, if you're a mom, what fear have you passed on to your kids? And how can you create a fun activity for you all to overcome that fear together? Make it fun. If you're afraid of, reptiles or snakes, why don't you go to a reptile zoo and share with them that you're afraid too, but you want to learn how not to be. So maybe you're going to touch a snake or make it an activity where you can help them overcome it. Because is it really fair that a child grows up afraid of dogs because the mom had a bad dog experience? No. So whatever your fear is that you've passed on to your children, I'm going to challenge you to help them overcome it. I'm going to challenge you to say, hey, you know what? I'm afraid of this too, but let's try to learn not to be. Let's do this. It's time to face everything and rise. So you're going to sit with your fear. You're going to figure out why you have it instead of overcoming it reactively. Like, I'm just going to go do it. Face it. Consider why you feel it. What's the root cause of it? And then start to understand how you can move the needle, how you can tackle it and move the needle in your life. Fear makes you make excuses. Identify those excuses you have. What are they? Well, I don't do this because of XYZ. That XYZ is your excuse. Write the excuse down and write an action plan to overcome it, because that is what's keeping you stuck. And one other thing, if you're around people that are afraid, they don't have a lot of bravery and courage, you are going to take that on as well. So find some people to surround yourself with that walk in bravery, they walk in courage. And if you can't find them in real life, I would challenge you to find them on podcasts, find them in books, find them on YouTube. I've already mentioned Brené Brown. Daring Greatly is one of the best books I've ever read. She wrote, it's amazing. It talks about facing your fears and being vulnerable with them. Just remember, though, it is human to feel fear, but it will keep you stuck forever unless you make the decision to take it head on. And you have the power inside you to do that. I wish you all the best in your quest. Let's take it on this week. I love this topic. And, it's not just about moving the needle in our life. Yes, that's what I'm all about. I'm all about progress because we know progress means happiness. But also, when we're talking just women here, Women have fought for so much. We fought for equality. We fought for rights. We fought to have our voice. And just to sit with fear and play small? Heck no! Let's not play small. Challenge yourself. I hope you take this on. I hope that you overcome one of your fears. And if you do, I want to hear about it. You can email me at fiercefunfeminine@yahoo.com. Don't forget to hit subscribe so that you're notified for the next episode, and share this episode if you know someone who's stuck, because really when we're stuck, it's all because of fear on the other side. Until next time, have a fierce, fun, feminine, and fabulous day.